I guess we can officially start now. Yeah, honestly, I love the, just the general and the synergy within those sort of conversations, especially when, as we've been discussing before after the interview. But I would like to, follow that up. Obviously, you're yet to release your upcoming album, which is coming after a big pause. Obviously, it's coming from such a big success from your previous releases and so on. So I'm curious to hear, considering that you're in a band that have achieved pretty much anything at this stage, what was the creative thinking behind the motivation of creating this album? What did you want to achieve? Like how you just ordering your thinking process?
So it started with that we didn't want to make it.
Okay.
We didn't want to make this record. Basically, it started with the idea of that the previous record came out literally. We were on tour right before the pandemic. The last show, that tour was here in Sofia.
Oh, nice.
Yes, and it was huge. Sold out arena. I had no idea we had this many fans in Bulgaria at all.
I was there.
Everybody was singing the lyrics. It was incredible. Yeah. And just the whole vibe, and on every way, I saw that the Bulgarian flags. Then the family. We are kind of the modern day Grateful Dead. Because our fans follow us. Right? Yeah. And I'm looking at the flags all over from Germany, Czech Republic, everybody, right? The most amazing was did you notice that there was an Israeli flag right next to an Iranian flag, and they were dancing together?
So amazing, yeah, that was so amazing.
So, that's what this is about. When I saw that, I'm like, man, this is what music is about. And so, so we were on a high of this tour was amazing. The record just came out on the last day of the tour, right? And then a week later, shut down everything. So that record, F8, was kind of the victim of this pandemic. Obviously, nobody focused on music; everyone was focusing on what was going on in the world, and so we were just kind of waiting. It's going to end in a couple of weeks, and then we go back on the road, and we can tour on the record. And then that turned into 3 months, and then 6 months and a year. And so it was probably like a year into the break when we started to talk about, okay, this can take much longer. This can be a bigger problem than we thought. And so that's how it came about. We don't want to wait too long between records. Let's start working on a new album. And so we went into the studio, and because we went in that way, I guess there was no pressure of any kind. There was no deadline of any kind because we were like, well, let's start recording, And also it was like, let's just record anything. We didn't have a concrete idea of what this record should be. Let's just record whatever we think it should be. And as we started to record, that's sort of that freedom of no pressure of any kind, no deadline. The music started to come out like, wow, this is very different. Sounds like that punch, but it's very different, And in that progress, we actually realized that, this is our 9th record. At this point, everybody knows how we sound like. At least everybody in heavy metal, hard rock knows how we sound like. And we already proved ourselves, and there's nothing to prove. Our sound is ours, It's we can do anything. And then, actually, this record became more diverse than any other record we did before. And we had this conversation, like if you look at bands like Queen, how would you categorize Queen? What is that?
Yeah.
But see, exactly, nobody can. But you know what that means? That's real freedom. Yeah. That is real freedom because Queen doesn't have to be anything but Queen.
And that's exactly what makes them Queen.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And so as we were recording this album, you don't compare ourselves because we don't sound like anything like Queen. But the idea of we can be just 5-finger death punch, and it doesn't have to be anything else, right? Yeah. And so by halfway in the record, we were super excited because, just the craziest material was coming out, but it sounds like us, but it's like, what is this? Is it rock music still? Is it heavy metal? Is it,
Yeah.
And so I think we kind of achieved that,
Yeah.
Like it feels like we arrived to this place where it's just us. It's just music. I don't care what subcategory, what genre it falls into. That's freedom. That's real freedom. Like when you don't have any sort of boundaries where you have to fall into.
That's so well said. And I'm curious. Have you always had this sort of approach towards creating music? Because I imagine being, such a huge band. I guess at some point you sort of feel responsibility, or you're sort of just considering how people would perceive what you're creating. Would you say that you've at some point experienced limitations in terms of your creativity, just considering outer aspects, or you always had this sort of approach to concentrate on just expressing yourself and being confident?
So responsibility becomes obvious, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, we were just before the interview, we were talking about that. Like, the internet is forever.
Yeah.
Whatever you say, it's out there now, So, you are responsible for pretty much everything you've done and say, and that's just the world today, right? 20 years ago, it wasn't like that, and then the 80s, when everybody was the big rock stars, right? They could do whatever, and there's no record of that. You really threw that TV out of it, you know what I mean? So, so there's definitely a responsibility comes with everything you do, but also with the music, yes. The bigger the band is, there is that, but creatively, I don't feel like it actually, got in our way. That it's not the kind of, I do understand the responsibility, but I don't think it got into your way, like, oh, we can't do this. So I never had the urge to do something that would be super irresponsible anyway, right?
Yeah.
But we do have a different method. I would say that the success of the band is, obviously we can, go online and read the stories and the crazy stuff, and everybody has their own idea how this happened, but and generally it's wrong.
Yeah.
Generally, when I read stories, it's like, it's not even close. You know what I mean? And so that's, but I think that's why people don't understand. That it was very conscious how this was built, and there's a method to everything you do, and everything is nothing really by accident, And so we have very specific ideas of how we create, and that is in the music. And if you're not familiar with the band, you just will know.
Yeah.
Like, I grew up in Europe, right? And so there's a very distinct. There's a difference between American music and European music. To me, American music is blues and rhythm based. Mm-hmm. So generally, it's about the grooves and how it makes you feel and the rhythm. We Europeans, even if you're not a fan of classical music, we are 100% influenced by classical music.
Yeah.
And I could probably whistle any piece and you know it.
Yeah.
You know the pieces. And you might not be able to name, like, oh, that's Bartok, Beethoven, whoever, right? But you know the song.
Yeah.
So we are definitely influenced by European, classical music. And classical music is pretty much about the harmonies and how they relate to each other, right? So that's the distinction between the two, that this is all feel and this is all, very musical, very almost mathematical in some way,
exactly,
right? And so I always wanted to marry them too. So Fifing in that point is kind of that, I grew up here, and so we have those heavy grooves, but it's always there, no melodies and no harmonies are always there, right? So that's always kind of leads the charge, but there's always this idea that the classical musicians have to write music and communicate complex ideas and feelings without vocals, right? Yeah. So how do you understand what Tchaikovsky wrote about? You kind of do though, right? Or pick, how do you know that, that fourth season, which season is what?
Yeah.
From Vivaldi. How do you know? You know, you feel it, right? So we approach songwriting from that perspective, that we write the songs first, and the song has to say something. It has to make me feel some way. And sometimes it's a primitive thing. Like, this song makes me feel like I'm going to trash this room.
Yeah.
That's the most primitive, aggressive thing it can be. Or it can be way more sophisticated. But the point is that we write the music first. Before we give it to the singer, Ivan, it has to be complete. And it has to have that feeling. Because now I accomplished what a classical songwriter should. I communicated something, some feeling. I'm changing you how you feel. And there are little tricks, like, for example, like play your guitar, and I'm going to put a drum beat on it that is a little bit behind, like a snare is a little bit late. That's going to create this, it's called the shuffle. It's going to create this feeling of like, oh, things are good, and you're feeling good. Yeah. Now, I'm going to same guitar riff, I'm going to put the snare right on the beat.
Yeah.
I feel like all militant and marching. Whoa. Yeah. and now I'm going to be a little bit faster. And you almost get anxiety because it's rushing.
Yeah.
Right? And these are almost like you can barely hear the difference, but it changes how you feel, right? And that's just a rhythm pattern. Now you start to play around with harmonies, when it's minor, when it's major, when it's dark, when it's light. And you start to put this together. That's how you write music. That's real songwriting. When you score a movie, if it's a wrong music, the movie is horrible.
Yeah,
right?
True.
So you have to catch that vibe. And so that's the whole method for us. Like, how do I catch this vibe? How do I give you something with just the music? How do I take you through different emotions? I can make you really anxious, let's say in the verses, and I'm going to relax you in the chorus. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what and now we give it to Ivan. And now he knows what we're doing because he can hear that. And sometimes he would ask me, like, okay, what's the vibe on this? What you were thinking when you wrote this? And I would tell him. He said, okay. And then he goes and writes his stuff. So, and then somebody would listen to it and it's like, wow, this is a very simple song. Yeah, you think so?
Yeah.
You just don't, because you don't hear what's really happening there. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Like somebody who doesn't understand how this works will say, oh, that's a simple song. Yeah, you can think that. But no, a lot went into that. There are, exactly what snare and what went where. That was very thought out, And the magic of simple melodies, there are a set of melodies that are just so ancient that you react.
Yeah.
That there are certain pieces that's like, whoa, that's just gonna get you, and all of those melodies have both physiological but some kind of a psychological attitude or a psychological impact on you.
True.
Because let's say take Carmina Burana. Yeah. And you hear that da 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 da, right?
Yeah.
Or you go and then you have songwriters like Vangelis and people like that who cut those things and they incorporate it in their music, right?
Yeah.
You have to know all that to understand. So that's what I mean. Like it looks like it's a heavy metal band, but it's not that simple. We're not just laying bricks like, oh, here's another, you know what I mean? So the success of the band didn't come out of like we were just lucky. You don't get lucky 25 times. We have 25 top 10 hits.
Yeah.
You don't get lucky 25 times. It's just not how that works.
That's such an amazing answer. By the way, thank you for sharing this information because it's so fascinating to understand the process behind your creativity.
Right.
And from what you were saying, it's very indicative that you have very analytical and detail-driven consciousness towards the music that you do. Would you say this is something that it's natural to you, that this is a talent that you've always had? Or would you say this is a sort of a quality that you developed throughout the years?
Both. Both obviously when somebody becomes a musician or artist, you have to have an inclination to begin. So you are inclined to be that person. So you have to have an understanding, and as you go, you develop it and you get tuned to it even more. So you get attuned to it. I have an idea on this where, that there are geometry.
Yeah.
Geometry is true.
Mm-hmm.
Math, I can challenge math. I went to, originally I was going to be a scientist. I went to school for kids for special math skills and whatnot. So I was theoretical mathematics for 3 hours a day, every day when I was in school. That was my jam, and I was going to be an astrophysician. But yeah, that's what's
I so want to, by the way, just hop on that topic because I'm an engineer is an education, and I'm so fascinated by astrophysics right now, and I'm so inclined to just hop on that topic. But please,
you're gonna stop these guys from stopping us.
Yeah.
So I in a very early age, I started this when I was 7 years old. Like they put me to this special school and I was jamming then, but I loved it. And then I got to the point I started to challenge pillars of theoretical math because I'm like, I'm not sure that you guys are right. I think you're wrong. There are certain ideas that I thought like, well, it's not actually true, and I think it's going to be challenged.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was going through it. I realized that what I can't challenge is geometry.
Mm-hmm.
And then it started to be obvious to me that also how the human mind works. It's a very linear working object because we are tied to this timeline. We were born and we will die, and whatever happens is consequential, right? So because of that, we are linearly thinking. Also because of our physiology, our most important senses are eyes, and so information coming at us, right?
Yeah.
So therefore we develop this, what happens, what's coming at us. So there's this very specific way that we think everything is perceived linearly. And I was fairly young when I started to realize, like, well, there are some issues with this. You know what I mean? Like I started to realize, like, that I'm getting frustrated by the human mind is not capable of understanding certain concepts. When I say infinity, yeah, intellectually you understand it, but you can never
perceive it.
You cannot process it.
Yeah.
You can understand it, but your mind can't process it, right? And then I start to find some answers how, okay, everything is a vibration.
Yeah.
Right? We know that. What matter is, it's, debatable. Is it a vibration?
Yeah.
Right? So we started to look at this, and if everything is vibration, and we humans are capable of perceiving certain spectrums of that vibration, but it's still vibration. All of it is vibration, right? And our eyes see a certain spectrum, or ears hear a certain spectrum, but it's all vibration. So I started to realize, like, well, music is a masterful manipulation of these vibrations. And I also started to realize that they also correlate with geometry. I don't know if you know cymatics.
Sort of.
So when you, let's say liquid or sand or any, or a Newtonian liquid, these materials, when they're being hit with very specific frequencies, they draw these very distinct, geometrical shapes. So that's how the material, rearrange itself on a certain sound. So, and that's geometry. And so all of a sudden my mathematical mind, and being heavy duty in that path, and music just made sense. Like, oh, this is one and the same. Yeah. So I started to understand, like, technically, this is a science. And now, this is to me more practical than anything. Geometry is practical because we use it in architecture. Theoretical math and, like even Einstein theory is actually, do we have practical applications?
No,
not really.
Not theoretical.
Not really. So, there's a lot of these theories, from string theories, you can go all day long. And they're just theories, but they don't have practical application. But here's music. I can manipulate frequencies and vibrations, and I can create these crazy harmonies, and it will affect you as a person.
Yeah.
And what are we? We are perception. We don't even know what are we actually, but be aware that something's happening. We have a perception of something happening around. That's the only thing we know, right?
Yeah.
And again, we limit it to specific spectrums, and the human mind, it's a natural condition, cannot understand certain concepts. It's like an elephant will never drive a go-kart. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Physiologically not possible. Well, don't challenge me on that, because somebody going to come with an elephant, like, man, I have an elephant, but, no one knows. But you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, here's this thing, music. And I can actually reach in and change how you feel. I can reach in, or I can give you an idea or a concept, or relay something that I felt or I know. And when I tell you something, right, like, you ask me, like, how did or that felt? It's very difficult to explain, because I'm going to use words, right? Now, we're speaking English right now, but in any language, words kind of mean different things. There are certain limitations. And the words are just like a really poor man's version of second-hand information, because I have to use a library that's limited. Like, you can't explain a blind person what blue is.
Exactly.
You can't, right? Yeah. So if I want to tell you how it felt to be standing on the top of the Himalayas victorious, I kind of can, but you will never feel it. Yeah. But music with lyrics, can get you closer to that. So it's a much better communication I can give you where it's going to go. And I tell you the truth, I think where the future is going, this newfound freedom, people going after blockchain and going after cryptocurrencies and Web3, this is all about people realizing the freedom and what we don't have freedom in, and what freedom really means. It's all connected. This is not an accident that this is happening right now. But I'm looking at it from the musician's perspective, and I'm looking at it like, man, this metaverse can give me another tool. Yeah. Imagine if I can, this would be virtual reality, let's say, not augmented reality, but virtual reality when you completely close away from, so it's completely virtual, you are away from the natural environment, and I can paint you a picture, give you lyrics and music, and then I can give you even more how I can give you a feeling. Because what are us humans? Basically, we just We just share an experience and we validate each other. Did you see that? Did you hear that?
So well
Did you feel that way? Right?
So like,
but that's all we got.
Just the social implication of,
But we're all alone and we're all clueless. We have no fucking idea, excuse my language, of what's happening. We just know that I'm alive, I think, and all this thing is going on. And the only way I can validate it is that we converse. Because there's another consciousness that seems to be independent from me, right? Because it can contradict me even. So it must be independent of me in some way. And now we can discuss, does it look this way? Is this feel that way? Is this true? So that's all we have. So the most important thing that humans can have is this conversation. So then what's more important than figuring out in what way I can share something with another person so it's validated? That's what this is to me.
I mean, from the very early stages of my life, I've always been fascinated by music because I've always, I've realized that this is the only way that I can impact other people.
Right.
And from a philosophical perspective, obviously, in the essence of every person's consciousness, you seek, as you said, validation. You want to mean something for someone else,
right,
because this gives you this sort of value,
right,
and I'm so, happy to see another person's perspective towards this point, because I think that many people neglect the importance of music from this angle.
Right.
You literally connect with people.
Right.
It's such a beautiful process, right?
Yes. And the thing is about what you just said, like that when we talk about the validation, it's not even the validation, you said validation and value. And it's not that necessarily looking for that, do we have value? It's not that kind of value. It's more of a question of our existence have a reason. Does it have a value of what do we contribute to this giant universe where we are in a suburbs of this galaxy in a small little star, right? And I just read it yesterday, like they realized like actually there are more than 20 trillion galaxies out there, much more than they thought, and then that multiplied by 200 to 500 million stars. I mean, that's just ridiculous. It's an inconceivable number, right? And so, what do we, little humans, in this corner of this, this galaxy, this insignificant solar system, what do we do? What do we have to say? See what I mean? So. Well, I do have some crazy theories though, because even when it comes to aliens, right?
Yeah.
When with these numbers, it's inconceivable that we are all alone. It's inconceivable.
Yeah.
And plus, I usually don't talk about this openly, but I had some experiences that I know we're not alone.
Really?
But but even if even if you look at it from the mathematical perspective, like this would be impossible that we are alone. Then here's an interesting thought. Whatever other species, and there are millions of them most likely, if not billions, are out there, they have the same dilemma. You know why? Because they all have to live in this three-dimensional universe. And as long as they live in the same three-dimensional universe, right, it's like the fish in the ocean. They're all in the same ocean. And this is a shark, that's a goopy, who cares? They're both fish. We are just a different species, grow up in a different planet, but still, we belong to your life.
Yeah.
And because we live in this particular universe, we all have the same questions. Because I know that it doesn't matter how intelligent your species is, it can be maybe 1 billion years old, and you're technologically so advanced beyond anything, you still don't know what the fuck.
Yeah.
Because you cannot. It's like the idea of there's a fish in the ocean, and this fish is in the ocean alive for 1 billion years. They see it went everywhere, saw every coral reef, every one of them, every sea floor, everything, right? And the fish cannot tell you, oh, I understand the ocean. I live here for 1 billion years, and I saw every single coral reef. No, you don't. You don't know what the ocean is because you're in it. You don't know that this ocean is on the planet, and this planet is in the galaxy, or in the solar system, and so forth. So we're in the galaxy, in the universe, and so you cannot know, even though you think you know the ocean, you cannot know because you're in it. Then we understand three-dimensional space because from a 3 dimension I can look at the paper,
and you can,
but you can't look at the three-dimensional space from four dimensions, so you're never going to understand it. And as long as any other species exist in this universe, they have the same problem. And they have the same questions we do. Where the fuck did they come from? What is this? What is going on?
It's all leading to that. It's all leading to that.
Now, so, and here we are musicians, and I manipulate the most basic building element of the universe, vibration.
That's so beautiful.
I make coherent, logical harmonies and rhythm, and I'm playing with the fabric of the universe. That's what a musician does. To me, okay, I'll do that. That's pretty good.
That's beautiful. I want to double down on something that you've mentioned. Obviously, we mentioned existence and the purpose of existing and so on. What are your thoughts on the matter? Do you think there's a grand purpose of our existence? Do you think there's a purpose behind what we are and what we do? Or would you say that from an analytical standpoint, we are just a combination of particles that just occurred in this sort of...
Yeah. So that can be. Because everything in this universe, of course, there's specific rules and laws, and it can, and every time that somebody says like, oh, this or that breaks the laws of physics, no, it didn't. Mm-hmm. It broke your understanding of the laws of physics, but not laws of physics. Laws of physics cannot be broken. Yeah, that's why they're the laws, right? So everything in this universe looks like it's very logical, and everything is the size and the speed as it should be. And when you start measuring things, it all just makes sense and it's logical. So it's almost like this is intelligently designed or built, right? And so you can tell that this universe is not an accidental event. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, as for us, what we're doing here and what our purpose is, well, nobody knows the answer to that. However, we can have all kind of ideas, or I guess suggestions, speculations. That's the word I'm looking for. You can have speculations, but I'm gonna pick the speculation that is the most practical, right? Because I can come up with theories that are useless, but I'm gonna go with a theory that's to me is practical because at least it has practical application and it does something, right? So imagine this: are we completely just meat puppets, and in a carbon-based life, and we just happen to have this intelligence? I doubt that, I did have near-death experiences, so I had actual situations when I perceived three-dimensional space from the outside. So I had experiences that was unalienable from me now. So I've been on the other side, right? And what happened, I realized that I was aware of myself. I was aware that I was dying, and so the whole process. And I started meditation and the path of yoga when I was 12 years old. That was my first out-of-body experience. That's why I started it. I wanted to research like what happened, right? So that kind of launched me on this Eastern philosophy and search for yogis. And I lived with monks, and seek out yogis and everybody. I meditated to people that can do things that are unexplainable, and that was my life path. It just, I didn't talk about that much up until now because I think the world is changing massively, and there are more and more people interested. And it's the same thing like UFOs. 20 years ago, I said, well, I had a close encounter. People go like, you're crazy. Now the military is talking about it, and NASA started to research it, or they just tell it that now they're researching it, right? But so the conversation is not in the open. So I think there are more and more people are actually realizing and interested in this. But so my perception was that I see where both in meditation, when you properly meditate, is you get to this self-realization where you are watching your mind and your body, but then who's the watcher? Because that's the meditation. The reason meditation is difficult for Westerners is because people made it difficult. Because if I told you what meditation is in 5 sentences, then I can't sell it to you. Yeah. Right? But if I wrote a difficult to understand book and a course, then I can. But actually, meditation is very simple. Meditation process is this idea that you have a voice in your head that's talked to you in whole life, a narrator. The voice in your head. Did I close the garage door? Did I do this? Did I that voice? We all equate ourselves. That's us talking to ourselves, right? Yeah. Once you start meditating and you say, okay, here's the goal. Meditate in try to not engage in a conversation with that voice. Try to silence it. This is the whole goal of meditation, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you the technical aspect of why this is possible. It is possible. I'm going to demonstrate it to you. I'm going to point at various objects in this room and tell me what they are, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this.
That's a paper, guitar, sofa, ceiling, floor.
And so what's going to happen, your perception, you can see and perceive what I'm pointing at, but your language can't catch up. Because that part of your brain takes a moment. The hard drive has to search for the concept, the word, and all what you know about it, right? So if you start moving your attention, and attention is interesting because you can look at me, but concentrate on him, right?
Yeah.
And you can totally focus on him. So what focused on him? Your attention. So that is a thing you can move around, right?
Wow.
Okay, now take this attention that you can move it around. And now some people meditate on chakras, people meditate on sound, people meditate on mantras and mantras of sounds, and the various paintings like those Buddhist they call the tankas that are on the wall. That's the point, that they're really intricate. So you concentrate on various parts of that painting, and that's why it's so complicated. Because the point is that you're moving your attention faster, faster than your mind can catch up. And as long as you're doing it, you can't formulate a word.
Wow.
Because your mind cannot access the hard drive. And, if I showed you an apple, you're going to say, apple, you already know how it tastes like, you know everything about apple.
Processing it.
Yes. But if I somehow get in between your processing and your perception, and I keep staying there, and I keep moving this attention, your mind is incapable of catching up. It can't formulate the word. So it's silence because it can't say anything. And you keep doing that, and you keep moving. And all of a sudden it becomes a game. It's almost like you're boxing. And you're not punching back. You don't want to engage with your mind. You just kind of like, you're just docking, right? Yeah. And then comes this experience. It's a very powerful experience in meditation process called self-realization. When you realize this dualism, which you come to this idea like, hold on for a second. I'm watching my mind trying to talk to me.
Yeah.
Then who am I? And that is a very powerful moment when it actually happens. Like, oh, you have a full-on spiritual experience. Like you just realize that me, the being that drives this meat puppet, and the mind is not the same.
Have you experienced that?
Yes. This is my life path. This is what I do. And so that's what meditation is. That's what that's the path. That's where you're gonna get that. But this is the basic level. From here you can climb. This because look, people say like this idea popped in my mind. No, it didn't. So your mind processing, the thought cannot be interrupted. It's going somewhere because you're alive, right? Mm-hmm. But you're just not aware of where it's going. So when you say, oh, this popped in my mind, well, something you saw that reminded that,
Yeah.
Like, imagine we have this extremely powerful device, this computer in our head. We are the programmers. And sometimes you just let it roll, just does whatever. And there's a process called mindfulness, when you're supposed to get into this spiritual place where every thought that happens, you're aware of. You never let your thought just do whatever it wants. If you can get to that, that's the next spiritual level. First is self-realization, and you realize I am me, and my mind is just a device that I'm using. This mind can run the body, and this mind is good for me to interact with this three-dimensional world. I'm not from here. You're not from here. The thing that we are is not from the three-dimensional space. But we need this spacesuit to interact with the three-dimensional space. So we are driving this meat puppet, learn how to talk, learn how to walk, and then now, this is our purpose. We are living in this three-dimensional world, driving this meat suit, and now we can interact. So if you call yourself a soul or a spirit, you can't do anything. But with this, I move the table.
Yeah.
My spirit can do that, but my body could. I can make the body do it. So you're driving this meat puppet. So what our purpose is, we are here. Everything that exists and was built in this world, right? all these things. It was an idea. And then
we materialize it.
It materializes. So our job is in this three-dimensional world is all our ideas, whatever we want to build, art, architecture, whatever it is, we can build it. We use this thing to manipulate the three-dimensional world. Now, if you go back to the other side, what I was just saying, so here I am driving this three-dimensional puppet in this world, and first realizing that you're doing that. And the self-realization, realizing the dualism. So this is me. My mind is a separate thing. And now, next level, I have to control this mind. Completely control it. And the level is controlling the mind is called mindfulness. Mindfulness is a process that you always aware of what your mind is doing. Now, if you're always aware of what your mind is doing, because you always can control, because you see the thoughts. Like, like if you're always aware of your thoughts, could you be depressed? No, because it's a choice. I decide what I think. People forgot that, but we have this free will. Nobody uses it.
That's true.
Nobody uses it. That's what free will means. Like, I decide what I think. It's 100% up to me. Nobody can decide what I think but me. And I'm in full charge of that. So how the hell people forgot and they just let their mind just do whatever?
That's so fascinating. And, I've always been trying to understand this perception because for me, emotions are chemistry. This is within our brain. These are just chemicals. These are results and products of our subconsciousness just reacting to certain things in a certain manner. And while I'm trying to understand this analytically, I'm very much struggling to achieve this sort of control that you were speaking of. So it's very interesting to hear this point from a person who, would you say that you achieved this emotional control over your thoughts?
It's more and more. It's very difficult. It's very difficult because that's a mastery. That's a master level of somebody who's really on a high point of enlightenment. Because it's a really weird barrier that we like to feel human. Because the spirit has the spirit experience, but it also has the human experience, right? It's almost like they're kind of body snatchers. Yeah. If there was this animal on this planet and we just kind of like, we can use this creature to do the thing, right? And so sometimes you let the body do whatever. It's almost like you watch the body and your mind just do. And there's some, there are certain, like you were talking about the emotions. That's an interesting thing, for example. Like, there are some beauty in that,
It is,
like what the body does and how your mind thinks about certain, how you feel things. You know what I mean?
5 minutes because we are really nearby your.
How many minutes after the show? 20 minutes after the beginning?
Yes, okay.
Okay, we have 5 minutes. So,
just give us time when you
get no worries. So there's these human things, and I've been initiated by yogis. Initiation is a process when you reach a certain spiritual level, and it's called lifting the veil of Maya. Maya means the illusion, right? Yeah. So I was initiated by Tibetan yogis, and this is what they say before the initiation. Basically, they were, look, it's similar to when you're a kid, you believe in Santa Claus, right?
Yeah.
And then once you know that there's no Santa Claus, right? You can't go back and pretend there is.
Yeah.
Initiation into the path, when you reach that level, is sort of like lifting the veil. Means that you have a real understanding what this experience is, what this world is, and then you can't ever go back to be human, the normal human. So that means these emotions not gonna drag you all over the world, and it's not, like you get to this different point when you always understand what you are.
This is such an interesting thought because it proves your previous point that you stated about the linear development.
Yes.
Because if you reach to that point, you can't go back, which is such an interesting.
Now there are events when the process of dying, there's a proof that we actually have an evolutionary possibility. There's a potential to go much further. And I don't know if people experiment with various psychedelics and whatnot.
Yeah.
that also can open certain doors. So you have certain understandings where we are in this state right now. We are bound to this linear thinking, but it doesn't have to be that way. Like, for example, in the process of dying, right? People will ask me, like, did you see a movie going in front of you, and did you see your whole life? And it's like, yes and no. Yes, but no. Because when you say a movie, we went for this linear thing, like what happened in my life and I saw that. No. You're aware of all those things at the same time. Like all of a sudden your mind opens like an onion, and then everything happens because time stops.
Yeah.
And see, time, that is what we call the fourth dimension, but time is really the tricky one. Because time creates this experience. Because what you do really is look at the world right now, and you looked at the world a second ago, right? And a second ago something was different, so you recognize the difference. My hand is here, and now it's here. The reason you know that because you saw it now, and in the next minute, that low time that passed, you perceive that time, so therefore you compare this and this, right? And because we have memory, if you didn't have memory, then everything would be right now. But you have memory, so you remember that end was there, right? So there is this fuckery with time. But when you're dying, some of that time thing kind of comes to a screeching halt. Like time stops existing.
It's like our own singularity,
right?
Where everything
That's what
stops,
it is. That's what it is. So it's the world collapses into like there is a scary moment in there. The world collapses into this singularity, I guess you can say. You're aware of all the things at once, and then you're also aware of this physical handicap that again we're looking forward, and we think like all things coming this way. No. Your mind is an antenna, and all comes from all direction. It's an omnidirectional mind, and we forget that for some reason. And now all of a sudden, now it's no longer linear.
Yeah,
it's coming from everywhere, and then everything you're aware of in the same time. So because this time thing disappeared. Like it doesn't matter when it happened, it just happened. So you're aware of this all the time. The next phase, a little bit scary, but fascinating. You have the moment of you cross the barrier. The barrier is when you also realize that everything you ever seen, everything you ever experienced did not happen outside of your head. It all happened in here. Because I actually don't see you. You don't see me. There are photons exploding into your retina, turning to digital information technically, because these are electrons traveling down on your neuropaths, right? Going to the translator in the mind of samples and visualize it. So what we actually see, we don't have a fucking idea. We don't know what they see. Our mind assembles that. Now, that's the collapse. When in the process of dying, that the second phase is that, like all of a sudden you realize that, oh my God, I'm completely isolated because everything that I ever knew, every person I ever knew, everything that I know is all in here, not out there. That out there might not exist. Wow. That moment is like,
fascinating as well, though.
But it's extremely fascinating, shocking, scary in a way that because it occurred to me in that moment that it's a possibility that I'm completely alone. And none of the things are real or existed ever. I dreamt all of this. That's a scary thought. Because there is something about that we're not alone experiencing it. We're all looking for an answer. And there's this togetherness of all the creatures of the universe and that. When that stops, when you go, oh my God, this is a possibility that I alone dreamt and imagined all this. You know how big this universe is? As big as I can imagine. Literally.
Even
that's
more
it.
than that.
That's it. No, actually, that is the limit. As big as you can imagine. Everything nothing can be bigger than you imagine. That's the limit.
Wow.
Right? And so all of a sudden when it all collapses, that is the moment like holy shit, So you coming back from there, I have to say that what's practical. And what's practical to me, I'm here to manifest. I'm here to create things in this three-dimensional world. And I try to understand. I'm frustrated that I know that the human mind has its limitations. It's extremely frustrating, but it's the best we got. So, you know what I mean? Let's try to have some fun, and I do my duty. And if our duty that maybe we are all connected, and then we are just nerve endings on some super being, then my job is to collect information and have the best collection of information. So I'm gonna have a good life, so I can collect crazy shit for the the collective, and that's kind of what Now, as for a real answer, nobody knows that. I know that there's nobody, not even an alien
Who's actually aware of the
can know.
specifics of
If they live in the three-dimensional universe, they cannot know. They cannot understand. No matter how advanced their technology, they can.
That's such a good final for our conversation, by the way. Thank you so much. That was absolutely amazing. I enjoyed that so much.